Hello, I'm Dr. William T. Wright Jr., and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Wright Experience. I'm looking forward to today's episode in particular because I've known this gentleman for a very, very, very long time. Uh, we'll use the term cut our teeth. We cut our teeth as budding administrators, taking classes at North Carolina State University many years ago, and we've remained friends and colleagues ever since. And I am excited about having him aboard the show tonight. We're going to learn some amazing things about his leadership and his lens and perspective of leading schools in 21st century. My guest is Mr. Hans D. Lassiter. Hans Lassiter is a native of Greensboro, North Carolina, and currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer or Superintendent of the Irvington Community School Corporation in Indianapolis, Indiana, where he is in his third year of service to its students, families, faculty, staff, and the community. He is regarded as a passionate and committed educator, having spent the last 32 years dedicated to the access and equity in educational services and experience to his students. Hans has truly risen through the ranks as an educator, serving as classroom teacher, building level and district level administrator, and educational consultant for the state of North Carolina, and now as a top administrator for the Irvington Community School Corporation. He is a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University, North Carolina Central University, North Carolina State University, and will graduate from Gwinnett Mercy University in Pennsylvania with a doctoral degree in education with an emphasis on leadership and policy. Hans is a married man and has 3 adult children and a terrier dog. I think that we'll clarify that in just a second. I think that's what I remember. Absolutely looking forward to talking to him. And at this time, I want to welcome to the Wright Experience, Mr. Hans Lassiter. Welcome to the Wright Experience, brother.
Thank you, my brother. It's a pleasure being here, and it's good seeing you.
Yeah, I think Paul Bidding will be very proud of us on doing this work today.
I thought about Brother Bidding this morning, actually, as I was preparing for this. He ran across my mind and my spirit, and I missed that brother. Initiated into our fraternity.
I knew you were going to put that in there. I knew that was coming. Go ahead, though.
Initiated into Kappa Alpha Psi through Cary alumni with his son. His son is his line brother. I was ecstatic and elated when I was able to assist him with that. And, I miss him dearly. Good man, good friend, good brother.
Very, very, very good brother. And we certainly miss him, too. So, Hans, we're going to jump right into it. Tell us a little bit more about your district and the specifics of it and the students that you serve and all of that. Just kind of talk to us about the work that you're doing currently.
Absolutely. Irvington Community School Corporation is the city of Indianapolis' oldest, and I dare I say most successful if you look at our longevity and sustainability charter school corporation in the city. We are authorized by the mayor's office, called the Office of Education Innovation, OEI for short. And we have been a player in the landscape of education, both public, private, and charter, in and around Marion County since 2002. I say with pride that we are, again, the oldest and most sustainable organization because, as you know, public schools, charter schools, private schools, you see the foundation of private and charters almost come and go. Yet we've been able to weather some storms and sustain the things that we have been doing since 2002. We have 3 schools here. We have our elementary school, which is pre-K 5, our middle school 6-8, and our high school 9-12. And we also have in our second year of operation an early college within the high school that we're very proud of. And we also have a reciprocal relationship with a neighboring public school district, the Metropolitan School District of Warren in Warren Township. I send 25 of our high school students over to Warren Township every day to take part in their career and technical education courses that they have at the Walker Career Center. And that has been a beacon and a boon for us with regard to student engagement and motivation, which I hope to go into later on today.
So that's pretty cool. So you expanded with the early college, it sounds like, and a partnership to get some more career opportunities. That's an awesome thing. And we have to do more of that, partnering with other folks to get children what they need to be successful.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump around a little bit, but we'll get to where we need to be. Let's talk a little bit about how we reach common ground. You're in the charter environment now, and you were in traditional public schools. And so it sounds like you've done some of that, but expound for us on how you reach those common ground places to be able to serve children.
Absolutely. Let's talk about math. So go into when you were in the 3rd or 4th grade and you learned about denominators, right? And you learned about common denominators. Yes.
There you
go. So at the core of what we do, the common denominator is the student. Let's not focus on the horror stories and the fallacies that exist between and among school entities. I get it, because I was a public school administrator for 30 years, let's say. And all we ever heard about was the charter schools are taking our students, or the charter schools are taking our money. And it is true that charter schools are funded through the traditional per pupil expenditure formula. So when we do head count in Indiana at the end of X number of days, whichever number of students are with us from Indianapolis Public Schools or Warren Township or wherever, they cut us a check, for lack of a better word. But at the heart and core of what we do is the student. So we focus not on competition or enmity. We focus on the common denominator. And we're very proud that we have an excellent rapport and relationship with our neighboring school districts, primarily Warren Township and Indianapolis Public Schools. In fact, our geographic location, William, straddles the, I guess, northern or easternmost IPS boundary and the westernmost Warren Township boundary. So we draw students from those two LEAs as well as others, but we have great partnerships and communication. I have been in conversation with Dr. Tim Hansen in Warren. I've had a chance to exchange emails with Lisa Johnson and IPS and her board chair about ways we can continue to partner together to do what's best for the student. If we don't have a program, they've opened their arms and their doors to their schools for our students. And conversely, if they don't have a program or an opportunity, we are available to open our doors to them. So it's been a great mutually beneficial friendship.
Awesome. And that gets a best win for all students and what they need.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about access in a little more detail. So if a student is in your presence, because I've been knowing you for years, how do you create maximum access for that student? What are some of the things that you look at to get them to that point?
I have a 3-pronged simple philosophy. All right. Access, equity, and opportunity. So you and I both being from North Carolina, you from Eastern North Carolina, and I'm from Greensboro, but my roots are in Northeastern North Carolina in Hertford County, good old Hosky, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
The access and equity and opportunities are not the same that you will find in an affluent area in Wake, Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Charlotte Met, or Guilford. As a result of that disparity, the students lose. And they're almost relegated to second, if not third class citizenship because of the lack of equity, the lack of access, and the lack of opportunity does not expose them to the rigor, the wide variety of, and the selection with and to a more rigorous and future-oriented academic program. Unfair. And you will hear me say, and it's been publicized here in Indianapolis, a child or a family's zip code should not be a determining factor on the quality of education he or she receives. And unfortunately, there are more schisms, more chasms created in education now, more now than ever before, with private schools. And there's even layers to that. Then you have parochial schools, layers to it. You have public schools and you have charter schools. No two schools are the same. So when students and their families choose to enroll in Irvington, our principals, the instructional staff, and our team are committed to erasing that zip code fallacy, to erasing any boundary or any maladjustment which exists to keep them from being able to have access to a quality experience. And we remove any barrier that we have the locus of control to do of any opportunity loss or lack of opportunity our children may experience. We have a situation with 1,050 students here in our corporation where there's an individual relationship which exists through our advisory process, K-12, where our teachers, staff, administrators, and even folks in my office know these students. I'll send you a video of our board meeting last night where we had two young ladies who took part in the Indianapolis Black Expo Circle City coordination pageant, who were, for the first time, representing Irvington Community School Corporation. Folks didn't know we existed. That's an opportunity. That's an access issue. But now in Marion County, Hamilton County, Johnson County, Hancock County, they know who we are, where we are, and what we stand for.
And that's because you've gotten out, because I know you again, you've gotten out and you've embraced those communities and you've learned what needs to be taking place to expand your product. So to folks who are considering entering leadership like we are, we've been in this thing for a while, but I don't know, 20 years ago, was it, Hans? I'm trying to think exactly around that.
I think we met fall 2000 or 2001 at NC State as MSA students.
There you go. So 23 years ago, when we were bringing pizza boxes back across the street at Hillsboro and all of that, we thought that we knew probably what we were going to do. I don't know that I ever thought I was going to be a superintendent at that time. Mm-hmm. But if we roll back the time to that time and we're telling ourselves again what we think we need, what would be some of the advice that you give? What would you tell a young budding administrator? Our feet are wet by that point, but to get to the point where we can affect change like we're trying to do now.
It's remarkable that you posed that question. I had a meeting with our principals yesterday, and we were talking about situational leadership. And you may remember one of our first instructors was Mike Ward, who at the time was state superintendent. And I remember he said one evening in class a couple of things that resonated and still remain with me 24 years later. Number one, he said, whenever you can, answer any question about situations or circumstances or what would you do with it depends. And he also, he made a comment about a lot of what you'll learn in your Master of School Administration program and your doctoral pursuits. A lot of what you'll learn, you may see. He said, you'll definitely use your school finance course. You'll definitely use your school law course. You'll definitely use your special education course. But by and large, a lot of what you need, you will learn on the job. Yeah. And if I, he said, could revamp the course of study and your degree requirements, it would be every class would be called situational leadership. So to any individual who aspires to move into administration, yes, theory is good, but a lot of what you'll need to be successful as a principal, as a superintendent, or whichever avenue you choose to take involves listening. It involves understanding the need to broker and maintain relationships because they're hard to come by, and understanding that good old-fashioned common sense, yet an application and adherence to established laws, state laws, local and municipal laws, and board policy will take you longer and farther than any degree or any class or any book that you'll read. Trust me on that.
Yeah. You also, I want to bring out something because I remember us sitting in class and there was a discussion about some kind of discipline law. I don't know what it was. And you said, I can't remember the code now, 115C through whatever you went down and quoted the discipline law. And I didn't tell you this at the time, but I said to myself, now, you know what? I can find that law, but I can't quote it. Well, what that did is it challenged me to get better. So the other thing that's got to happen is when we know better, we got to do better.
Yes, sir.
To piggyback on exactly what you're saying, and that is through situational leadership. You're not going to know everything when you when you first get going, but you got to be willing to continue to learn. So
absolutely, you're absolutely correct.
I don't remember what it was. I remember you quoted that whole policy. I said, you know what? I'm gonna know that thing by the next time I come to class. So.
And I enjoyed my time in North Carolina because 115C is education law in North Carolina. Here is Indiana Code 30. And I mean, you have to understand what the expectations and legal statutes tell us we can and can't do. When you operate within those laws, you're fine. It's when you go outside of state law. Remember, board policy is rooted in state law. So as long as you understand state law, you understand board policy. 100% consistent application to state law, you'll go a long way. Now, people need to understand. So aspiring administrators, hear me clearly. You're still going to get sued, okay? As Mike Ward taught us 25 years ago, we live in a litigious society. And the thing that I remember, and I joke about it to this day, is that there are people who see the big yellow school bus and they see dollar signs. Yeah. And they don't understand that we're taxed and stretched for dollars like everybody else. But a lot of times, litigation can be avoided through those things we talked about: relationships, and the utilization of laws, application of those laws, and good old-fashioned common sense.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if the emphasis on that is like it used to be. I haven't taken an ed leadership class in a while, but I just wonder sometimes if we're still really emphasizing the practicality of what you're talking about. I think we're teaching policy and that kind of thing, but yeah, you and I both know now without it we're in it.
Yeah, theory and policy seem to be what we're looking at, William. Again, I have a chance to interact with aspiring administrators, and I ask, what are you taking? What class are you taking? Ethics is still around, but a lot of it now is postmodernist theory. We're looking at critical race theory as a very real element, which discusses how and why. Audience and Dr. Wright. In case Dr. Wright doesn't want to bring it up, I can discuss it because I talked about layers and stratification and education. But America's schools are rapidly resegregating. Yeah. And when I lived in North Carolina, I looked at it, I said, okay, maybe it's just a Southern thing. Well, now I'm in the Midwest. Again, I'm seeing it. And then when I travel for our job or I go to conferences and I interact with our colleagues in the Western part of the country, they report the same thing, that our schools, our public schools, are rapidly resegregating. And we have to figure out why. Now, let me immediately say as a disclaimer, I mean, parents should have the right to choose where their child attends school. I mean, absolutely. As with anything else, education parents community is a product. And if we apply product guarantee, if you have an automobile that's not meeting your expectations and breaking down and is not roadworthy, what do? Either you repair that vehicle or you find a new one. With the same business model is applied to education. So I do not fault, I do not blame, nor do I criticize any family who makes a decision to say, you know what, I want something better for my child. The local LEA is not doing it for us. I need to pursue other avenues. Applause. But there is also a more nefarious, dare I say, sinister motive behind some of this repackaging and revisiting of ethnic and racial segregation is troubling. And I know you and I have chatted about current political ideology and current political winds. The current and even the last 8 to 10 years political landscape in our country have been particularly troubling for me because I've seen a loss of civility. I've seen a lack of individuals and groups being able to come together and have a civil conversation about anything until it deteriorates into race and ethnicity and class. And it doesn't have to be that way. And that's why education has long been viewed as a vehicle that consolidates, unites, and builds bridges. But if we continue to experience this racial and social stratification and split, we may find ourselves, at least philosophically, back in the 1950s and 60s. Not a good look. And we have to do something to reckon and come to grips with. We have to face this problem head on. encourage conversation, and return to the days where education was viewed as an opportunity to stimulate intellectual inquiry, stimulate the power of the mind and brain, stimulate action, thought, and theory, leading to increased and better citizenship. Somehow, William, we've lost our way. Banning books, banning curricular themes, not allowing the instruction of African-American history or culture or sociology or psychology, that's baffling. Yeah. And we have to ask ourselves, what is it that is so frightening about ethnic studies? Not just African-American, but Latin American studies, Asian, the Jewish American studies, the study of the Jewish religion. What is it that is so off-putting that would cause educated and highly intellectual people to introduce legislation to ban books? I thought the First Amendment guaranteed the right of freedom of expression. I thought due process allows us the opportunity to pursue life, liberty, and happiness through intellectual inquiry and through education. So we're willing to violate the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and our unalienable right to live and to learn because we don't want someone's feelings to be hurt.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with that one too. And I wonder, though, Hans, how many people in our positions, not the classroom teacher, the classroom teacher can't defend but so much, the principal, but how many people in our position, because of the way that we're hired and paid and so forth, are fighting that battle? How many are willing to stand up and say, as long as it's not pornographic in nature or something like that, a child ought to be able to read books that depict and emulate who they are. As an African-American child, I ought to be able to go to my school's library and read an African-American books and it not be illegal or frowned upon or what have you. So, how did we get to that? And do you think that people at our level are really willing to fight that battle? I know I am, and I know you are, but how do we say this ain't okay? How do we get to that point?
I feel like what we're doing is we're taking a trip down memory lane. Dr. Ken Brinson, again, one of our best instructors at NC State.
Absolutely.
Early in our experience with Dr. Brinson, taught us, as administrators, you have to make this decision at some point in your career, and it won't be just once. Right. You have to ask yourselves, is this the hill on which I am willing to die?
Yeah.
Is this the sword on which I'm willing to fall? In other words, pick your battles.
Right.
Now, for me, Dr. Wright and audience, those hills and those swords are easily identifiable in terms of ethics and just, again, common sense. Dr. Wright just said it. What is the issue with a Black child or a Nicaraguan child or a Venezuelan child or a child from Denmark or wherever being able to go to the school library and find a book on his or her culture, language, and customs? Right. What is it then about that child wanting to learn more about who he is or who she is, counter perhaps to what they've been taught? Right. Now, your audience, and I challenge you when we're done this evening, go look it up for yourselves, but it is widely known fact that the Daughters of the American Revolution and Daughters of Confederacy had a profound impact on the development of curricula, which was taught in the Southern states, which used to be the Confederacy. And the objective of the Daughters of the Confederacy manipulating and having a great influence on curricular themes in the former Confederacy was not to hold those individuals who were in the Confederacy as presidents or judges or soldiers, not to cast them in a negative light. If you, audience members, were ever taught that slavery was not about, that the Civil War was not about slavery, instead you were taught it was about states' rights. If you were ever taught that the slave owner was called a planter, if you were ever taught that the slave enjoyed a relatively peaceful and serene environment with kind planters who looked after their health and welfare, even giving them food and rations and a place to live. Your curriculum was influenced by the Daughters of the Confederacy. As we have gone through and we've explored and learned and been able to read things about who we are as a people and as a nation, we found out very quickly that a lot of what we learned as elementary students, junior high school students, high school students, and possibly college students was a big fallacy. And that is what has changed, William. That's what's changed, and it's sparked an intellectual renaissance in people in this country who demand to know why, who, and where. Mm-hmm. Why were we being taught these lies or these fallacious statements? Who was responsible for the implementation of this false curriculum? And where do we go from here to correct it so that we truly are inspiring a generation of students to want to learn? William, that's why you have extreme engagement or disengagement, rather, of a certain segment of student, because these children come to school, they do not see who looks like them standing in front of them or in the office or walking about in leadership roles. They are not learning about who they were or who they are, other than you got put on a boat, you got shipped from West Africa, some of you got dropped off in the so-called Caribbean, and then some of you came to the mainland. You were slaves. Lincoln freed you. You went through Reconstruction. You had segregation. Martin Luther King was your champion. Barack Obama is proof. And now look at you. That's it. And as a result, kids don't see the relevancy. Thus, they fail to see the importance of why I'm here. Right. That's why the relationship that we have with the Walker Career Center and revamping and reawakening students through career and technical education brings true relevance. Why I'm here. It brings rigor. It's not easy getting a certificate, and it helps to build a commercial and business relationship between student, businesses, and the communities in which they live, and will ultimately serve and own a business. Those things wake kids up. And as you said earlier, your metrics are positive. Student achievement, student attendance, discipline, teacher resignations, all in the right direction. When you have a happy student, you have happy educators. When you have happy educators, you have a happy school. We have a happy school, you have a happy community. A happy community is a successful community. And that's how we rebuild back better and stronger.
Well, I got you going on that one. That's a good one. Yeah, but that's the thing. I keep asking myself, when are leaders really going to defend what's right for the children that they serve? Mm-hmm. You know, well, I think books about the Confederacy should not be banned either.
Right.
But when I have grandchildren, I think, are you ahead of me on that, right? You
3 granddaughters, yeah.
Right. When I have grandchildren, I want them to be able to go to the library and read a book about a little black boy or girl. And I don't think that ought to somehow challenge them in a negative, if they learn that folks were mistreated back in the day, but we're in a better place now. I think my child ought to have the opportunity to learn that. So that we can be better moving forward. Doesn't mean that I got to be mad with folks now, but I should know that I come from a generation that in which we've been mistreated. But let's go down another rabbit hole here, so to speak. So literacy, and this is related but different. We have so much trouble right now with literacy. And I keep telling people that, if I get in my car and I go downtown and look at a restaurant and the name of the restaurant is Good Eats, and instead of it being EATS is EATZ, that's going to confuse that kindergartner when they get back. So how do we get, first of all, how do we get kids reading and motivated and that kind of thing? But how do we make sure that we're not confusing kids while we're trying to teach them literacy? if that makes sense.
Awesome question. So you're right. I got a little inflated. So let me bring.
Oh,
it
you're
down.
fine. You're fine. You're fine.
Again, in our conversations with the leadership team here, with our board, we talk a lot. In fact, our state superintendent, Dr. Katie Jenner, issued a state of emergency for literacy in Indiana. Okay. Troubling data. In fact, we discussed yesterday in the principals meeting that the average American high school junior is reading on the 5th to 7th grade level.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So something's wrong. Now, so there's several ways to approach this. Number one, some data can be found with respect that teachers who come into our profession and are licensed as elementary, middle, or secondary educators are not taught how to teach kids how to read.
Right.
Literacy is a science, thus you know about the science of reading. But teacher candidates are not given that instruction unless they're pursuing a reading or literacy credential. So a lot of what's coming from our primary grades is sight recognition, word recognition, enunciation, and phonics. But is that going to have a long-term effect on a child's ability to read, but bigger than that, William, comprehend that which they read? Mm-hmm. A lot of the assessments that are given in Indiana and North Carolina are reading-based. Even a math end-of-course test or end-of-grade test has word problems. If the student doesn't have a grasp on the vocabulary and doesn't know the context of the word that's being used in the test, they're not going to get the answer correct. Right. Now, number two, you made a very good and relevant point about good eats with a Z. I don't know about you. I don't know about the audience, about how you feel about this, but this irks me, what I'm about to tell you. A lot of what happens, William, is the result of not correcting grammatical and linguistic errors when students are young. Watch this. Explain to me how. Just watch an interview of a major league sport or even just on the news, anybody, and you hear an adult say this. Question. So yes, William, we saw that you were a witness to the malfeasance that occurred at the apartment complex. Can you give us your synopsis of what happened? William. Well, they was over there and we was sitting over here, and I seen somebody go in. I don't know where they were supposed to be, but we seen them, right? We seen them go into the apartment, and then the next thing we know, we was like tripping because it was a fire. Here you have an adult, 30 years of age, with multiple grammatical subject, verb, dangling participle, all kind of grammatical malfeasance. But the bigger problem, dear audience, is that 30-year-old passed somebody's kindergarten through 12th grade English class. And no one ever took the time to say, no, that's not correct. Let's try this again. And we're not going to let you go to the next level until you demonstrate with consistency, regularity, and mastery proper subject-verb agreement and grammatical structure. Now watch this. We get criticized, particularly as Blacks, when we insist on proper grammar, proper subject-verb agreement. We get told, oh, you're trying to be white. Well, you know what? You know what I'm saying? And this is a standard, acceptable version of the English language. In what world? In what world? Let one of your employees, William, let one of your colleagues draft an email and send that email to all staff talking about, we seen a good game Friday night. They was balling hard. Will they be?
I might as well get ready. They'll be in my office Monday morning, I'm sure. Right.
So those things all lend themselves collectively to the issue and problem you see today. The lack of relevancy, kids don't understand why they're there. Right. The lack of relevant heroes or understanding, I come from a good people, Spanish, Black, white, Asian, whoever. You see historical figures, you see cultural figures, you see intellectual figures who look like you, who sound like you, who speak like you. So now it's relevant, now it's rigorous, now you know that you have good stock, and you have educators who are holding you accountable to those high standards and will not let you skate by until you demonstrate mastery consistently and regularly. Somehow we fell off the track. Got to get back on, brother.
Yeah. Do you think that with that knowledge, now that we know it, what do we need to do? And when I say we, I mean those that understand that that's the need. How can we get that message across? Do we have to start speaking to churches and that kind of angle? Do we need to get civic organizations, Greek letter organizations to do more? Is that talking to mama on the street corner and say, correct? Don't just allow. It's already at the cookout. You and I talk a little bit differently at the cookout, but when we're in the general public, we're expected to do that, and so we got to teach that to this generation. That's the thing I think that's missing. And how do we get at that? How do we fix that?
Awesome. So allow me to take you for a trip. A colleague of ours in Charlotte, who I believe now is superintendent in South Florida, talked about the need for students, just human beings in general, to have a sense of duality about them.
Right.
It's called code switching. You just said that your conduct and your speech patterns and vocabulary at the frat party or the frat meeting may be a little different than what it would be as you're presenting your budget to the county commissioners. It's called duality, right?
Right.
So that's fine. That is fine. But you have to be able to navigate and move about comfortably and effectively in both of those worlds, number one. Number two, you have to be courageous. Yeah. And here's what I mean by that. Again, I go back to yesterday's principals meeting, where I work with some of the most dynamic instructional leaders in the state of Indiana. And we've all come to the agreement. We are not interested in social promotion. We are not interested in saying, you know what? Yes, this is what the child psychologist, who's childless, by the way, says about retention and not holding kids back. We believe in standard-based instruction, standard-based outcome, and standard-based promotion. If you do not possess in May or June that you have mastered at least 80% of what we have you to learn, you will not go forward until you demonstrate said mastery in either extended school year or summer school.
Okay.
If those two things
mandatory,
then not elective, not, hey, we'll think about it. It's here. Okay. Now, how do you promulgate and promote that message? You're right. What you're doing now, Brother William, is outstanding. This platform is a magnificent modicum for espousing and getting the message out there that here is the issue and here's how we can fight it, but we need your help. Mm-hmm. The churches, the civic organizations, the city councils, the county commissioners, the NCAA here in Indianapolis, partner with these organizations to reaffirm and reinforce the message of excellence and accountability for your students and your school systems. Without that, William, you'll continue to have, when you watch the WNBA playoffs tonight, someone who graduated from the University of Las Vegas. Yeah, I seen that she was open, and I throw her the ball, and then next thing we know, we seen that we had the possession, and we are going to win. And just like last year when we was champions, we're going to repeat again this year.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
It can be done.
And somebody's got to fix that. Somebody's got to fix that because that reinforces stereotypes.
But remember, Dr. Wright, and remember, dear audience, is this the hill on which you wish to die? Is this the arrow or the sword, rather, on which you wish to fall? You have to decide what's important to you. You have to decide, hey, splitting verbs are a deal breaker for me. Well, for me as an educator, and you're coming to work for our schools corporation and teach our students, if you're interviewing with us and you are talking about, I seen that you need a third grade teacher.
Next.
What's wrong? What's wrong with our profession having standards? Now, parents, for those watching, I guess to go into a world of duality, I feel you. Parents, I want you to hold us accountable.
Absolutely.
Make sure that we are properly degreed, experienced, trained, and capable to teach the students. I don't ever shy away from conversation with parents about what indeed is the preparation of your staff. No problem at all.
Right.
It's when, William, folks who have not taken a minute of an education course, have not answered one question on the old NTE, now known as the Praxis, somehow find themselves making policy and making policy decisions about our profession, what's being taught and by whom and for how long, as opposed to a governing body of educators who can make those decisions. Right. Are doctors governed by non-doctors? Are attorneys governed and held accountable by non-attorneys? Police, fire and rescue? But in education, remember, William and audience, if you don't know, in North Carolina, up until maybe in recent years, and it could still be there, but in North Carolina, the minimum education attainment requirement to sit on a board of education, that means the policy-making governing body of your local LEA, that means the boss, if you will, of the superintendent, who 9 times out of 10 has a doctorate. The minimum education requirement to sit on a board of education in North Carolina was a high school diploma.
Yeah.
In the words of the high school children, where they do that at?
Nowhere else but education. That's true.
So we need to demand better respect, more recognition of the work that's put in. William, this is why teachers are leaving.
Right.
I mean, think about it. If you do an exit interview, I was assistant for human resources for years, and I would do exit interviews. And this is what I would hear. Hans, I went to school, incurred tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. You know, I have multiple degrees. I have passing practice scores. But I'm finding that a parent can come in and tell my principal, I don't want my child taught by Susie because she's in love with and married Jane. And that decision stands. Our educators are not respected for who they are. They're not respected for the gifts they possess. We as administrators, we have to partner and support them to show and encourage them that we value and respect what you do and what you bring to the table. That's the beginning of the conversation to stem the tide of the great teacher resignation.
Yeah. And we've got to be understanding that from recruitment to retention to professional development cannot be done like it was 25 years ago.
Absolutely.
We got to understand. First of all, you know, when we got into the field, there were a lot more teacher ed majors than non-teacher ed majors. Now, I wasn't a teacher ed major, and I think I've done all right. So we don't shy away from folks that aren't teacher ed majors, but I promise you the prep has to be different now. We can't allow ourselves to have these cookie cutter programs that we pull out of the box to train teachers and to motivate them to get better. How do we continue to support the new teacher? Other than things that we've already talked about, recruiting them, getting them in the building, and getting them up to speed.
Mm-hmm. So I can speak for some districts and corporations which I've served, and I can speak here. Okay. Our human resources director does a magnificent job of continuous induction. So I like to answer that question with 2 words: induction and onboarding. And again, audience, William and I came into education. I was a lateral entry teacher, meaning I wasn't an education major, but I had a degree and a qualifying GPA in a subject matter that could be licensable. So with my history degree, I was able to become a social studies teacher. Political science degree, social studies teacher. Okay, here's what I got. And I tell this story to young teachers, frequently. When I came to the great Hillside High School in Durham, North Carolina, in the 1991-92 school year to begin my career as a lateral entry teacher, I met with the late, great Richard Hicks, my principal. And Mr. Hicks was a legend. It's still spoken of highly in Durham to this day and in Rocky Mount. And he gave me a tour of the school, my classroom. We went back to his office, and he gave me 3 teacher edition textbooks, a plan book, a grade book, a set of keys, a firm handshake. Good luck. That was my new teacher induction orientation. That was it. Yeah. So as you said, that's not effective today. Right. Students coming out of school have so many options. I can take my degree in whatever, and yeah, I wanted to teach, but this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm going to take my degree and go be a social media influencer. I'm going to take my degree and go start an online business. So the key is successful, ongoing, and consistent induction and onboarding for new, novice, and even experienced teachers. Just because a teacher has exited the initially licensed phase number 1, which is 3 years, doesn't make them an expert. We need to continue to make available to our staff from 0 years to 20 years experience prescriptive, meaningful, professional development opportunities that apply to the issue in which they believe they need improvement. The PD also needs to be relevant and immediately available for integration to their classroom or division the very next day. Right. Don't sit me down for 3 days and talk at me and I can't get any benefit from it. Show me how this particular presentation or equipment or philosophy is going to improve my ability to develop relationships with my students, to improve their time on task or engagement, to improve my outreach with the community. Make it make sense is the key to being successful in retaining good people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. We're gonna come back and close the show out in just a minute. I want to do some prep for next week. But thank you. It's been awesome, and we'll talk a little bit more in a minute. As you can see, I wanted Mr. Lassiter to come on the show for a while. We finally got him here. We've learned so much about leadership and how to continue moving forward to be even better leaders. He has been doing this work excellently for 30 plus years, and we're glad that he still has the fire and the drive to continue to improve outcomes for students and those that serve them. As we continue with the Wright Experience, we've got some episodes lined up that will come forth and give you some more insight, not only into educational leadership, but also other facets of leadership. And we're also still looking for guests to be a part of this show. So as you run across folks that you'd like me to interview, I'm glad to do so. If you reach out to us, we'll be glad to have them be a part of this work that we're doing. Hans, Mr. Lassiter, thank you so much for the work. And now at the end, I'll talk about that banner behind you. It looks really nice. I like the colors for sure. You knew I would, right?
I felt like you would see the blue and gold and have a comment. I'm sorry, the black and gold. So
it looks black to me. I mean,
it's black and gold.
Black and gold.
I did that in deference and respect to my old friend. And I'm actually, audience and Dr. Wright, I'm pleased that you did not take this opportunity on your platform to talk about that 66-point debacle that we had to suffer through last week in Durham. I appreciate your recognition of Aggie excellence. Every cycle, every business has a down cycle, but we will be back. Aggie Pride hadn't gone anywhere. Aggie Pride nationwide, and we will be back.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned it. I was going to give you some grace, but it's probably a little better if you had mentioned it and kind of, so I gave you that space. But Mr. Lassiter, in all seriousness, Hans, thank you so much for being a part of this and offering that insight. I know that my listeners are going to benefit from it. This platform is open anytime you need it. If you want to come back at a later date, even before I call you, just reach out and let me know. We try to use this platform to promote good leadership and insight from the perspective of the folks that are actually doing the work every day. So thank you for agreeing to be a part of this, and we have you back at some later date. For sure.
Thank you for having me, and give my regards to your family. Much prayers for you,
Absolutely.
brother.
Thank you.
Prayers for your longevity and success and sustainability. I love you like a brother. And
Absolutely. Same right back at you.
I'm so proud of everything that you've accomplished, and you will continue to accomplish with God's strength. I got you, bro.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to the Wright Experience audience, good evening.